Hey guys, what's up? It's Gus, and today we're going to be reviewing the Pwnage Ultra Custom Wireless Lightweight Mouse. So I heard about this mouse on Kickstarter a few days after its announcement and was actually one of the first to pre-order it. There were a lot of customization features that intrigued me about the Pwnage Ultra Custom, the swappable shell and buttons, and how you can use it in wire mode without the battery for a reduced weight. It's really an ultra custom mouse, but the main feature that made me want to get it was its wireless feature. Before the Pwnage, we had no wireless Ergo lightweight mice, so when I saw the Pwnage, I had to have it. I just knew it would fit my hand better than the Viper Ultimate, which just didn't suit my palm grip. The only major concerns I had about the Pwnage were number 1, is the sensor any good, and number 2, is the mouse going to have any latency issues? Well, if you had any of the same concerns, stick around because I think you guys will be quite surprised. Before we get into it, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel, and if you want to see more content like this. With that being said, let's begin. The dimensions of the Pwnage Ultra Custom are 120mm long by 66mm tall by 42mm wide, and when compared with the G-Wolf Skoll, which dimensions are 125mm long, 68mm tall, and 42mm wide, we can see that the shape is almost similar, with the Skoll being the bigger one out of the two, which is great for me because I just perform better with smaller mice in general, and the Skoll was just a bit too big for me. The weight of the Pwnage is around 70 grams, and compared to the Viper Ultimate, which is 74 grams, I was able to tell the difference in weight, with the Pwnage feeling the lightest out of the two. Mouse 1 and Mouse 2 use 20M Omron switches, which are a solid choice as many people love the light and crisp sound they offer. There is virtually no side play on Mouse 1 and Mouse 2 either. Side buttons feel okay, and as we can see, they are a little on the flimsy side, but under normal use, they perform perfectly fine. The scroll wheel feels nice and smooth, very similar to the Marlowe Minus. However, mine did develop a little issue, more on that later. And as for the DPI button, it's rubberized and feels good, no complaints there. Here's a quick sound test of the buttons and scroll wheel. As previously mentioned before, you can change the DPI, mouse 1 and 2 buttons, and the back shell of the mouse. Here's a quick demonstration of that. And if you don't like holes on the top of the mouse, you can use the solid shell covers included. On the bottom, we can see the sensor, which is a PMW 3335, and it performs really well actually. It's certainly not the best, it reminds me a lot of the Razer Viper Mini sensor, which isn't a totally bad sensor, but isn't the greatest either. The sensor didn't really give me any game-breaking issues, but you can tell the difference between the PMW 3335 and the PMW 3389 in terms of liftoff. Located on the bottom, we also have the 100% pure virgin PTFE feet, which are some of, if not the best stock mouse feet I have tried on the mouse, and when used with a Thor mousepad, it makes the mouse feel like it's sliding over buttered glass. And finally, located on the bottom, we have the on and off switch, which has two modes, RGB on and power saver mode. Speaking of the RGB, let's get into that. The Rgb is minimalistic and located on the back bottom side of the mouse, and as I have stated with many mice before, it's kinda pointless as your hand covers the Rgb when in use. Seriously, why do many manufacturers put the Rgb in the way of your hand? Seems like a waste, and personally I would have preferred it not to be there and would have preferred a lower weight instead. Look at Glorious and Extrify for proper RGB placement. On the plus side, it does offer this feature where the RGB turns off when moving the mouse, saving you battery life, so there's that. To charge the mouse, you get a USB Type-C cable, and while it may look like a paracord, it doesn't quite feel like one as the cable is quite stiff. So if you're planning to use this in wired mode, don't expect to have a wireless feeling when using the cord. Shame of you if you bought this mouse to use it in wired mode. With that being said, I never tried to remove the battery, nor did I play with it in wired mode, because there are better, lighter mice that perform better in that aspect. The battery life is pretty good. I have been using mine for about 2 solid weeks with about 1 to 3 hours of gaming a day, and it still has half of its battery life. They advertise about 40 hours of life with the RGB off and the polling rate set to 500 Hz, which in my experience is pretty accurate and takes about an hour to charge. To mess with the polling rate and to see the battery life, you will have to download their software, which is okay. You can change DPI levels and change polling rate, nothing special. The construction of the Pwnage isn't the best around, but it's far from the worst. There is some creaking on the body, and my scroll wheel developed this weird issue where if I move it, I can feel the plastic part of the scroll wheel rub against the switch, causing the body to vibrate ever so little, which can be annoying for some. It wasn't game breaking for me, but it is something I noticed. And now the question we've all been waiting for: how does it perform? Guys, I am happy to report that the Pwnage is a solid wireless gaming mouse, and you should consider taking a look at it if you are in the market for a wireless, lightweight Ergo mouse. The sensor never gave me any major issues, nor was there any issues with latency. I was so surprised because having never heard of Pwnage before and the Ultra Custom being advertised everywhere, I had thought this mouse was going to be more of a gimmick or a meme. But to my surprise, it performed way better than expected. I feel like nowadays most mice come with decent sensors, and it is very difficult for a manufacturer to screw up the design of the mouse in terms of components unless they are really trying to cheap out, which in Pwnage's case, they aren't. I never had any issues with the mouse spinning out. The construction is about as good as any lightweight mouse with holes. Sure, there is some creaking, but what lightweight mouse with holes doesn't? In gaming, the mouse performed great. Flick shots felt great, tracking was good, and sure, the sensor isn't the best, but it's far from the worst. Again, it feels similar to the Viper Mini sensor, with the Ultra Custom feeling the best out of the two. Now I don't have CDs laying around, but I did have some spare change, and the Pwnage Ultra Custom tracks about a dime high, whereas the Viper Mini tracks about 2 dimes high. The Virgin PT feet are godly, which was another surprise and another indication that Pwnage didn't cheap out on components. They are really some of the smoothest I have tried. I hope they start selling spare feet because I'm gonna need a few pairs. The battery of the Pwnage is pretty decent too. It's not as good as the Viper Ultimates, but decent enough so that you won't have to charge it every day. I did change my polling rate to 1000 MHz, and that seemed to have drained the battery a lot quicker than when set to 500. There wasn't any differences I could tell when changing the polling rate, so for maximum battery life, leave it at 500 MHz with RGB off. With these settings, you'll get the 40 hours of playtime advertised. The only other issue I noticed when playing with the Ultra Custom was that the sensitivity was a little off. After a while, I noticed that 400 DPI didn't really feel like 400. It felt more like 500. I quickly fixed this by setting it to 300, which felt right at home as a 400 DPI user. So if you feel like it's a little too fast, try messing with the DPI in software. So what are my final thoughts? For $89, the Pwnage Ultra Custom was a complete steal. I don't think you get one for $89 anymore, unfortunately. In fact, I think they will be available for around $130 to $150 in the near future. Personally, I think anything above $100 is a bit too much and goes up against the Viper Ultimate and the G Pro Wireless at the $130 to $150 price tag, and those mice are just better all around. But for their first wireless mouse, I am very happy with the product and I am glad I gave them a shot. So Pwnage, if you guys are watching, bravo, you guys did an amazing job. Don't forget to hit that bell to get notified when we upload. Like, share, and subscribe. This is Gus from Hardware Unplugged. I will catch y'all later. See ya.